for me, and I wanted to ask you this, and you just touched upon it there, really, in answering that last question. I wanted to ask you sort of how important the squad makeup and the composition is when it comes to these set piece successes, because you mentioned Virgil van Dijk, one of the very best in the air.
Mhm.
Like he wins everything. Scored again last night at time of recording for Holland, another set piece goal, a header. So when you've
Mhm.
got him in your team and Trent Alexander-Arnold and his quality delivery, it feels like it should work every time. And a lot of our goals came from those two sort of combining as opposed to well-worked routines and all that sort of stuff. And I guess from your perspective and any set piece coach's perspective, if you have two players of that ilk and that caliber and that quality, that must make your job ever so slightly easier, I guess.
Absolutely, without a doubt. The player quality is everything. The player attributes are everything. Essentially, what we do as coaches is we'll design routines and principles that hopefully complement the skills and attributes of the players. And when those two things come together, that's when you're going to increase the probability of scoring. Now, I understand the idea that when, yeah, you've got players like that, you should maybe score every time. Unfortunately, football's played by humans. And so humans don't always deliver all the time. And it might sound silly, but little things like I'll use Trent Alexander-Arnold as an example. His last few crosses before he takes a corner might have been terrible. He might have just felt like he should have been fouled and sorry, he felt like he's been fouled, not got a free kick, or he's been booked and his head's gone a little bit. All these things affect the quality of the delivery. So it's never always going to be 100% all the time. What Liverpool have been good at over the past few years, and I remember reading this in Pep Linder's book when he talked about set pieces, they're really good at generating more chances and more set pieces from their set pieces. That's one of their big things was they'll use outswinging crosses from both sides usually, and they're really good when it comes out of the box at getting it straight back in, whether that be a shot. So Szoboszlai scored against Villa, I think,
Yeah,
earlier in the
yeah.
season from exactly that. That wasn't the idea, in my opinion. The idea was the outswinging crosses then connected by Van Dijk or whoever to score. But Szoboszlai is there in case it's overhit, which it was, to then go and have a shot. Nunez's goal against Forest in the 98th minute, that's come out a couple of times, gone back in, gets a flick on, goes in the goal. This is where Liverpool have been great. And the other thing for them is the second contact. So when I look at Liverpool's squads at the minute, I don't think it looks like a huge set piece team because there aren't loads of targets. There's Van Dijk, who, in my opinion, is probably the best in the division, possibly the world at attacking crosses. Around that, Kwanzaa's not bad. Konate's not bad. Matip, all right, he's gone, not bad. Nunez can get a good flick. He's not bad. Jota, for his height, is good in the air. But it's not like Arsenal have more targets. City have more targets. City have got 4 or 5 huge players to go and hit. But where Liverpool can make the difference are the likes of Diaz, the likes of Salah, the likes of Jota picking up the seconds. So Van Dijk might win the first contact, or whoever might win the first contact. After the first contact, it has to arrive somewhere. If it doesn't go in the goal, it might hit the bar, the post, the keeper, a defender, whoever. So it lands somewhere. And these players have such a good sense of anticipation in the box that they can go and arrive for second contacts. I think it's either Diaz, I think it was Diaz scored away at Old Trafford from exactly that. It was a flick from Nunez towards the back post, and Diaz turned it in.
Yeah.
Salah got one earlier in the season as well. Again, I think it might have been a Nunez flick towards the back post.
Yeah.
Those little things, for me, that's where Liverpool can excel. But that, coming back to the actual question, that is massively down to the composition of the squad and the attributes of the players. So you try to design your routines to complement what you've got in the squad. Otherwise, there's not a huge amount of point doing it. If you're going to try and hang the ball up in the air for someone to go and attack, but all your players are 5'5", it's never going to work. So you have to try and suit it as much as you can.
No, absolutely. Yeah. Well, I was lucky enough to be in the room with Pep Linders about 3 or 4 weeks ago now. And we spoke a lot about a lot of things, obviously, you can imagine. And one of them was actually set pieces and obviously the composition of how we tried in swingers and out swingers. And a lot of it was about the position. It was Mo Salah, he sort of highlighted where he stays in relation to the actual set piece. And that was all based around picking up those second balls and keeping
Yeah.
it alive. And yeah, absolutely spot on in what you just said there. It was a really fascinating listen, actually. And
Yeah.
Liverpool have, as much as I've lamented our actual ability to score and defend from set pieces at times. There are moments whereby you're right, you don't necessarily see it as a set piece goal, but I guess keeping the ball alive and those second contacts are still related to that. And also, you touched on it earlier, actually countering from defensive situations. We have thrived in, we have had some success and we scored against Manchester City. Famous goal against Manchester United a couple of years ago from Mo Salah on the counter from a defending corner. So you are absolutely spot on. And you started to answer my next question there, which is absolutely fine, by the way, but I will ask ask it anyway. From what you've seen, how much or how little do you think Liverpool could benefit, both in the attacking department and the defensive department? Because again, I come back to it, we're not the world's worst or the Premier League's worst by any stretch of imagination, but given the quality of players that we have, do you think a set piece coach, if you were applying for this job, should be licking the lips at the prospect of working with this group?
With a small amount of caution, yes. And I say that because I don't think Liverpool are there yet in terms of it being, obviously it's a hugely attractive proposition. You get to work with Van Dijk and Trent and people like that, of course. I think they need at least one addition, maybe two. And this doesn't have to be a 6'4" giant. This could just be an aggressive dog that's in there to go and block opponents and mark well defensively. And I'll come on to the defensive side a little bit more in a sec. I think there's great potential, but I think they need some additions in the recruitment side to make Liverpool a real major force from these situations. As I said, on the attacking ones, there's a clear strategy, and they've been consistently one of the best. For me, last season, defensively is where Liverpool struggled. So they could see, I think they were the 8th best in the division defensively. Again, 8th best, it's not terrible, but that's not Liverpool. That's not where a team that should be competing for all the titles need to be. You need to be excelling in these situations. I looked at a lot of clips over the last few days, and the big thing that stood out for me, one is an over-reliance on Virgil van Dijk. That's to be expected. You want your big man to go and head as much as you can, but I think he needs some help. But the second, the worrying thing for me, which is I think for a set piece coach going in, needs to be addressed straight away, is the level of aggression and the mentality to defend. So Van Dijk usually is the second last zonal player to defend a corner. I think it's quite often Trent outside of him, possibly Gomez, but it wasn't like a major threat outside of him. So Van Dijk would go and attack as much as he can, but he's only got his zone. There are still other areas there. So invariably, Kwanzaa would be in the zone, Nunez would be in the zone, Robertson would be at the front. There'd be McAllister would often be in there as well. Kwanzaa's all right in the air, Nunez all right in the air, Van Dijk very good. McAllister, okay, Robertson, okay, but you're not hanging your hat on these guys to defend the box. The biggest concern for me was on the quality of the marking. And I say the term marking loosely because when you have a heavy zonal system, which Liverpool do, the markers aren't markers, they're blockers. Then, for example, if you've got, Enzo was one of, Enzo Fernandez was one of them who was one of the blockers. He might be picking up Dan Burn at Newcastle. Never going to win a header. What his job is to do is to try and block him, stop him getting off the ground, affect his momentum, affect his jump, that sort of thing. And from what I saw, there wasn't enough aggression and like a nasty mentality to go and do that. I felt as though they let the runners go too much, which then you've got your Dan Burns and Gabriels and that. They're running onto Van Dijk, but with momentum. So where they're sort of level in terms of their quality of attacking, Van Dijk's got a standing start and these opponents have got to run because not enough is being done to try and stop them. So that for me, so Luis Diaz was another one that was doing it. These aren't guys that you're going to say, right, to go and stop a big man, you're the people I want. But they're the people that are left. And I feel as though, as I said, recruitment be one thing, but the real development of a mentality and a culture around being horrible to defend your own box, that for me is where the coach would need to start, is doing that. When a goal goes in, you see Van Dijk's body language. He is spewing. He's absolutely fuming every time, especially from a set piece. I don't see that in the players around him, that same level of hurt when it goes in. And as mentality is a massive thing, and something I always come back to, I think of the Juventus teams a couple of years ago when Chiellini, Bonucci would make a block or a sliding tackle and you'd think they scored a goal, you think they won a trophy, the way they celebrate with the keeper and high-fiving each other. That, for me, plays a massive part. Arsenal did it well towards the end of the season as well. They started to do that.
Yeah.
Those things, as small as they may seem, it just reinforces. It comes back to what I said in an earlier question about the body language and the feeling and mentality. These things add up. Organisation is one thing, but that mentality and belief and culture around these things, that is so significant. And for me, for a coach going in, that's where they would need to start.
No, I can 100% agree with you there. I think that taking pride in keeping clean sheets and sort of dealing with defensive situations needs to come back, because you're absolutely spot on. Virgil van Dijk feels like he's got that sort of ingrained within him. And obviously the captaincy and he's the leader of the defence and all that sort of stuff comes as part and parcel. But there's definitely been times whereby you think if he isn't dealing with a situation, we've got a real problem on our hands. And I
Yeah,
guess
yeah, yeah.
from an opponent's point of view, you just see that in sort of the build up to the game. You'd analyse that and go, well, if we can just avoid Virgil van Dijk often enough, we give ourselves a sniff here. So you're absolutely
Exactly.
spot on, yeah. And I think in terms of obviously maximising the potential in the attacking sense as well, that's something that needs to happen, because there have definitely been issues in both departments, I think it's fair to say. I wanted to ask you, you mentioned you touched on some clips there, you watched some clips from Liverpool point of view. Did you happen to come across the game at Goodison Park at all? Because Liverpool were bullied, I think it's fair to say, in that game.
Hmm.
And I just touched on it there, like that taking pride in defence, like that wasn't evident whatsoever. Is that something you as a set piece coach can really touch upon, really? You think you obviously a lot of what you do is based on organisation and based on sort of, I say, routines and trying to work out where to be and how to deliver. But do you do a lot of like, we need to sort of sort ourselves out and actually defend this properly and be that aggressor? Is that something that comes into your remit too?
100%. It's a massive part of it. It's a massive part. As I said, the organisation is pretty straightforward. The the players, they're pretty bright when it comes to these things. So once you
Mm,
tell them once, especially at that level, at Premier League level, they know where they need to be. So then, like preparing for each game, you'll look at opposition strengths and weaknesses and trends and what they try to do, and you'll let the players know this is what they're going to try and do. This is where they're going to try and access. Be aware for this. In order to counter this, you need to do this. So you'll give them the solutions going into it, and then it's around the mentality. And sometimes, to be fair, a lot of the time, you need to reinforce it. So I think if you leave it for too long, like whatever you accept is what it will fall to, or the standard it will be. So if it dips a little bit and you accept it, it will dip again until you stop accepting. So you need to maintain the standard really, really high. And it's not always easy. So like for example, if it's Liverpool playing away somewhere on a Tuesday night in the Christmas period, I don't know, down at wherever, away at Burnley last season, for example, though Burnley are different to what they used to be, so it's not quite the same. We'll go back 10 years and say Stoke, classic Stoke away on a Tuesday night. Though the situations, if pissing down with rain, you
yeah.
don't, or you're more likely to be like, don't fancy this. You see these. Again, Everton's a great example, to be fair, because they're good at set pieces, so they will see those moments as we can have a chance here. If defensively you're not thinking right, we can have a go as well, you're going to get undone. And the one that, well, there were two goals against Everton. One of them was the second phase, which was
Yeah,
just a complete mess, and then the second one was the back post one. Calvert
yeah,
Lewin, I think, scored. And that was another thing I noted when I did watch the clips. The players in the zones get blocked too easily. So where Liverpool have five or six zonal players, it means you have to leave five or six opponents free, because they're not marking anyone there in their zone. So the taker remains free. The player that's left back on the halfway line for the opposition is left free. So then there's three or four others. Those others can then just go and stand freely next to a zone and block them to allow their mates to come and attack the ball. From what I saw, the zonal players for Liverpool accepted too easily that they're going to get blocked. And it's an easy cop out where you say, yeah, no, I got blocked. In preparation, you can see what the opposition are going to do. You can see when a block is coming, your body position, being side on, checking your shoulders, being aware, communication around you. Again, that comes back to culture and mentality to
mm,
assess where the threat's going to be. These things are red flags that you need to see and then go and affect it. But this again will come back to the culture and the mentality. If it's not something that's being reinforced day after day, session after session, they're the things that's where the gaps are going to come, where opponents can go and exploit. So I had something at my previous clubs that I call 1%. And it'll be little things that are done that no one else in the stadium sees, no one on TV picks up on, but little things that make a big difference in terms of, it was usually on defensive ones rather than attacking ones, make the difference between conceding or not conceding. So it might be recognizing that a block's coming and going and affecting it to allow your mate to go and attack the ball. It might be a particularly strong marking job to allow our zonal player to come and attack the ball. So getting a key threat, stopping him from getting off the ground and keeping him quiet. It might be something like preventing a corner. So one of the best ways to defend a set piece is don't give it away in the first place. So someone sprinting for a ball in the 93rd minute when you're tuning up, sprinting back to put it out for a throw rather than a corner, That's the 1%, and that goes in the video meeting. That gets highlighted in front of the rest of the squad and the staff as a job well done. Because you might have just prevented us from, well, you prevent us facing another corner, possibly prevent us from conceding another goal. By the end of the season, add all those 1% up, and that's a big difference. So those things are huge.